Good afternoon. Welcome back again to another Sabbath afternoon Bible study. My name is I am Elder Bradley Knox, and it is a pleasure here to once again delve into the Bible and in a profound way. I believe it speaks to where we are in this day and age. We see there's so many things going wrong with the society because the society at times have thrown God out of their midst, and as a result the consequences are always dangerous, and there are always some inherent consequences. We're going to do a study this evening. The history teaches present truths. We have heard present truth has been bandied about on many occasions, and it most time is cued from in a certain direction. But I want to look at how history really teaches present truths, and if anything, we can learn a lot from these present truths that is taught and dispensed loudly for us to hear, in fact to learn from, and can be and should be considered present truths, historical present truths for our time. I want to break this down in the context of leaders, in the context of when we feel independent of God's leadership. Israel is one of those nations that has at times abandoned God, and only to their own distress. Today, even in amongst our churches, even in amongst Adventism, we have pastors and leaders, from top to bottom, who generally try to loosen themselves from God, and on many occasions try to depend on their learning and their higher learning, and depend on their own skills rather than in humility depend on God's leadership in this sojourn or in this journey that we have in this earth. Our journey, our stay, no matter who you are, is very limited. And as such, I believe, use the limited time we have here to spend enough time listening to and act upon the guidance of God. Most importantly, when we are placed in positions of leadership. So our study this evening looks at history teaches present truth. You see, the government of Israel, God's chosen people, was administered in the name and authority of God. And so, the story of Israel demanding a king and the anointing of Saul as their king, found in 1 Samuel 8 to 15, carries a profound lesson about human desires, leadership, and most importantly, God's sovereignty. You see, while the story of King Saul, Israel's first king, is etched in history, it holds like a huge bell today. And from where I sit, history is in slow motion for all to see. But one of the things I want to advise each and every one of us in today's dynamics is to be careful what we wish for as it relates to a leader. Some of us like charismatic leaders. Some of us like leaders who are subtle and soft-spoken. Some of us like leaders who are brash and bold, willing to take a risk. Some of us have leaders who behave in a dictatorial fashion. Nevertheless, I want to tell you that the characters of our leaders should align with the character of God. It is the demand for a king the Israelites that demanded was, as I want to say, a grave error in judgment. So I want to take a look at what took place here in 1 Samuel 8, verse 5. But I want to start from verse 8. 1 Samuel 8, reading from verse 1. And it says, "And it came to pass when Samuel was old, that he made his son judges over Israel. Now the name of his first son was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. They were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, took bribes, and perverted judgment." Now, what is clear is that Samuel's sons weren't doing too well. They, according to the scriptures, they turned aside for lucre, took bribes, and perverted judgment. There is other places in the Bible that tells us that they also slept with the women in the temple. So, why then, with all of this dynamics playing out within Israel, that Israel will look yonder and want a king like all the nations, when all the king like all the other nations around Israel was behaving exactly like these boys here in Israel? I want to suggest to you that what they wanted to do, they wanted to amplify their own personal agenda. And so they were making excuses, trying to sound politically correct, try to use every influence that they have to ensure they get what they want. Bearing in mind, the Bible described them this way. Then all the elders gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah. In a deep study and examination of this situation, it is clear that this is no run-of-the-mill or off-the-cuff situation. This has been a long-standing, carefully crafted position. At this time, as they were building the groundwork, laying the groundwork for this kind of demand, they now believe the time was right because the issues were stacked against Samuel. Bearing in mind, they make this profound declaration. They said, "Behold, thou art old, thy sons walk not in thy ways." So they are making the case as to why Samuel must give them a king like all the nations around them. "Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." I want us to bear this in mind. All the nations around the Israelite nation at the time were behaving exactly like these men were behaving. See, they rejected God as their direct ruler, showing a lack of trust in God's unique leadership style. But I want us all to bear this in mind. Sometimes what people desire, or better yet, what we desire, is not in our own best interest. You see, when we seek to pursue worldly conformity, it often leads to unintended consequences. It often leads in unintended consequences. After coming to Samuel, after making their declaration, verse 5 says, "And they said unto him, Behold, thou art old." But verse 6 says this, "But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us, And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. So Samuel knew that what they were asking for is not necessarily good for them, was not good for them, or would not be good for them. Bearing in mind, his sons were doing exactly what the nations around them was doing. So when the leaders came to Samuel and was asking for a leader to judge them like everybody else, knowing that his sons were doing exactly like those men that they were demanding to do, it is therefore clear. It had nothing to do with correcting a bad situation. What it had to do with their personal agenda. You see, one of the idea about this study was that, you see, they saw the way all the leaders around them live. They live lavish, they live large, they live in wanton disregard to rules, to laws and order. They live without the constriction of a heavenly ruler. They live without the confines of any stricter or any order. And so they themselves want to immediately get out of the bondage of God. You see, and in that regard, sometimes what we ask for as it relates to leaders is not necessarily what is good for us. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. But the Lord would then respond to Samuel. And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say to thee, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should reign over them. In other words, you see, the actions of the nations around them look more enticing, look more appealing, seemed more attractive. That was what was at the center of their mind. So God make it abundantly clear, Samuel, it is not you, Samuel, that they have rejected. They have rejected me, my rules, and my government. You see, for they have not rejected thee, reference to Samuel, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. You see, according to all the work which they have done since they have brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day wherein they have forsaken me, serve other gods, so do they also unto you. But now therefore God would admonish Samuel, now therefore, hearken unto their voice. This is the most profound part. Hearken unto their voice. Listen to them. Attentively listen to their arguments. Albeit, protest solemnly unto them. Shew them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. We have seen this in many times over. We're seeing this happen in many countries in our current time. We're seeing leaders like Idi Amin and Pol Pot. They seize power of their nations. And as they see power of their nations, there are large groups of people within the country within which they rule, willingly or unwillingly take sides with them. Now, they got an intense warning about the choice that they were making. You see, the parallel between ancient Israel's selection of King Saul and the election of our current president offer insightful lessons on leadership, societal values, and the consequences of prioritizing outward appearance over inner character. You see, these men who approached Samuel They were not interested in men who did right. They were not interested in men who uphold God's principles. They were not interested in men who stood for the right no matter what. They were interested in what was appealing and popular. And Samuel told the words, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked him for a king. And he said, God is now setting out to Samuel what to relay to the people, looking ahead of them, he being their creator. This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, to be his horsemen. Some shall run before his chariot. He will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yard, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. He will take your manservants and your maidservants and your goodliest young men, your asses, and put them to his work. And after all this has been imposed upon you, you will see the fallacy of your demand and your decision. You shall cry out in that day, because of your king you shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. So now, we find God giving them a roadmap of the choice that they are making, painting a carefully crafted picture, showing them the decision that they are making in vivid imagery form, what the outcome will be. So, nevertheless, the Bible says in 1 Samuel 19, nevertheless the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, nay, but we will have a king over us. Now, after we heard the lengthy look and description of the king that they have chosen, not only the king that they have chosen, but how it will turn out for them, they didn't step back and say, let us reconsider, let us double check this decision. Instead, they reaffirmed their commitment to want a leader like every nation around them. So they make it abundantly clear, in no uncertain term, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. They said, nay, but we will have a king over us. I want us to bear in mind this. The Bible here mentioned it was the leaders who came to Samuel. But here the Bible is making a general case. Nevertheless, the people, meaning the leaders who came to Samuel, sold this idea to the general population. And it also injected the general population with a kind of excitement, a new order, if you will, of what will be. See, God's sovereignty is established on one premise, one vital, most important premise, and that is free will. He said, despite warning them, God allowed the Israelites to have their way, demonstrating his respect for human choice while still remaining sovereign in this regard, while still knowing the choice that they will make. You see, sometimes God permits our choices, even if they lead to challenges. And the reason for that is to teach us deeper lessons about trust and dependence upon God. Let me go over that one more time. You see, God sometimes permits our choices, even if they lead to challenges. And the most profound reason for this is to teach deeper lessons about trust and dependence on God. As Christians, choosing worldly leaders come with a cost. Choosing worldly leaders come with a cost. You see, earthly systems of leadership are often fraught with exploitation and burden. Leaders driven by human ambition may prioritize personal or political gain over the communal well-being of their subject. There's an individual that I admire immensely, and he made a particular statement that currently resonates with me. Not only it currently resonates with me, it is applicable even today. That man is none other than the legendary Wilmot Perkins. Wilmot Perkins made a particular statement that resonates with me even to this very day when I look at what is happening in the world around me and even in the churches. Wilmot Perkins made these profound statements. He says, power tends to corrupt. Power tends to corrupt. And ultimate power corrupts ultimately. You see, that was exactly what was happening to these men in Israel, these leaders. Power, the desire for power, corrupted their sensibility. And they feel that if they get a leader doing the things that they believe suits them and excites them, then they will be good leaders. But I wish to digress. They would have been corrupted ultimately. You see, 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 4 also made an impassioned plea to the children of Israel. It made this profound statement. It says, if my people, speaking of the nation of Israel, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins and will heal their land. You see, Israel's leadership was in a turmoil. Samuel's two sons was doing all the wrong things. And that was trickling down into the society. The society now is morphing into something that it is not supposed to be. And it has led to these leaders to approach Samuel wanted in a full-blown way to be like everybody else. I want to say today, in this day and age, as a Seventh-day Adventist, we are doing exactly the same thing. We want to be like everybody else. We want to look like everybody else. We want to sound like everybody else. We want to behave like everybody else. We want to worship like everybody else. But there is no instance in the Bible where the children of Israel behave like the nations around them and it works out in their best interest. You see, Samuel heard all the words of the people and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. Samuel take back a report to God, gave God word for word the reply of the Israelite nation. And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice, unto their voice. Make them a king. See, sometimes God knows best. Sometimes it worth the while to take a step backwards and consult with God. Not only just to consult with God, but listen to that small, still voice. You might be impressed or in an impulsive mood to do something that you feel is right. You feel is to your benefit. But here we see God is looking clearly on the children of Israel, knowing well that their demand and their choices will work against them. In today's day and age, we see the same thing happening. Recently, we find people like Jerome Diop, Carlton Burr, bringing in Kirk Franklin, the likes of Kirk Franklin, to sing, to participate, and to perform within the confines of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. These men are worldly men by all intent and purpose. But guess what? We now are infected by the spirit of the world. In a similar way, we are like the Israelite leaders. They were infected by the mores and ways of the leaders and the nations around them. See, but in choosing leaders, there are certain character traits that these leaders must embody. And it is in that context that when leaders embody these character traits, we can be careful to follow them. I am sure that leaders who approached Samuel, they were charismatic. They were well spoken. They wielded immense influence, and of note, they were popular. You see, Saul, in choosing Saul to be leader or king, Israel's first king, had certain character traits about him. Saul was physically impressive, head taller than anyone else. But Saul's problem, as a matter of fact, let us see how 1 Samuel chapter 9 describes Saul. You see, and he had a son whose name was Saul. Listen to this. A choice young man and goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upwards, he was higher than any of the people. In today's day and age, our young ladies would describe him as tall, dark, and handsome. Tall, dark, and handsome. You see, the outward appearance is no measure by which we should choose a leader. You see, but the thing that this physically appealing and attractive man lacked, he lacked spiritual depth and character. He lacked spiritual depth and character. Remember now, we're talking about history teaching present truth. Superficial attributes such as charisma or physical stature are insufficient for effective godly leadership. You see, true leadership requires integrity and obedience to God. I have seen with my two own eyes where leaders in church behave in such a way that would pain the heart of anyone who knows what a true godly leader is. True leadership, let me emphasize this, true leadership requires integrity and obedience to God's way. You see, King Saul was noted for his impressive physical stature. standing taller than his peers, which made him an appealing choice in the eyes of the Israelite nation. We have that exact same scenario here with us. We have charismatic leaders who is able, by way of their oratorial skills, charm and woo large audiences. Yet, their character speaks to the character of the devil. You see, men of worldly prominence, successful businessmen, media personality will appeal to the world who equated such visibility with effective leadership, sometimes at the expense of evaluating deeper character traits. Deeper character traits. And so while Saul was head and shoulders above everyone, Saul did not unlock the spiritual temperament that would lead Israel in a positive way. But Saul, over time, developed a rebellious character. Saul repeatedly disobeyed God, such as offering unauthorized sacrifices, sparing King Agag and livestock, despite explicit instruction by God. You see, when we take a look at these Bible studies are not just to amplify a particular scenario in the Bible, but it is for us to learn something from them. You see, Samuel's rebuke was most profound. So let's take a look at what this rebuke was. 1 Samuel 15 verse 22 tell us what this rebuke was. It says, I want to read from verse 19 to set the stage of where King Saul's character was. Verse 19 says, Wherefore then didst thou not obey the Lord, obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil and did evil in the sight of the Lord? So Samuel confronted him for doing evil. And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag and the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. That was not the instructions he was given. But this is the beginning of a character build-up, the beginning of who Saul will turn out to be. But the people took the spoil, Saul declared. The sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord, not his God, thy God, to your God, he declared. So, while he was the man in charge, he don't take responsibility for the bad actions and bad influences of the people. Samuel said, The Lord hath great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. In other words, Samuel is making it clear that that kind of character that he is so far developing has nothing to do with being a good leader. I want you also to bear this in mind. For leaders, partial obedience is still disobedience. It's a true worship of God is demonstrated through faithful submission to his instruction, will, and his ways. See, Saul's reign was marked by impulsive decision, disobedience to divine command, and a gradual descent into insecurity and paranoia, which ultimately leads to his downfall. I want to let you know this afternoon that as we speak, this nation is going through a similar turmoil as was the nation of Israel. And not only here in America, this turmoil is in effect. Other countries around the world is facing similar situation. I want you all to understand that the church here in the United States of America, the churches groups like the evangelicals and the Heritage Foundation, they have chosen to be like the elders that came to Samuel. They have chosen to be like Saul. They want conditional obedience for conditional benefits. See, on the other hand, in modern times, with more information available than any other time in history, yet leaders bearing these characteristics are propelled in leadership all over the world. Not only here in America, but all over the world. You see, Saul's early humility really presents an opportunity for him to speak to God. When Samuel came to him, the Bible makes it abundantly clear that Samuel had a one-on-one conversation with Saul. And the Bible says when Samuel turned his back, God gave Saul a new heart, suggesting Samuel was willing to work with God. Samuel had the aptitude to want to go the direction of God. Nevertheless, Saul would develop bit by bit a heart of rebellion. You see, sometimes many leaders in this world started out very good, and bit by bit, small compromise, a creeping compromise as is described, really continue until they are in full-blown compromise. That is what is happening to many leaders of the world today. You see, effective leadership requires humility, self-awareness, a reliance most importantly on God. Nowhere should pride and insecurity undermine one's ability to lead well. Or better yet, pride, insecurity will ultimately undermine one's inability to do well. You see, when one take a look at, for example, King David. When King David's shenanigans were called out, King David came to the place where we wrote Psalms 52. King David came to that place where he said, "Search me, O God, and know my way. See if there be any wicked ways in me, and lead me into the way everlasting." I want to let you also know that even with King David's failings in Israel generally as a king, and even as a father, he knew that he did wrong. He knew that he had compromised his position with God. Nevertheless, he would repent in a most heartbroken way for the sins that he committed. I want you also to know that God called David a man after God's own heart. And it didn't happen because God favored David more than anybody else. It happened because David subjected himself to repentance and turned himself to be led by the wisdom of God. See, one of the reasons why it's best for God to choose leaders for us, one of the reasons why God should choose leaders for us, is God judges from the heart. God judges from the heart. When we look at why Saul was chosen, the Bible tells us that he was chosen because he was head and shoulders above everyone. He was a goodly young man. Like I mentioned before, he would be described as tall, dark, and handsome. His outward appearance supersedes everyone else. You see, after Saul's failure, God chose David, a man after his own heart. You see, God values the inner qualities of a person: faith, obedience, and character over external qualifications. Leadership in God's eyes is rooted in a heart aligned with His will. Not what pleases us, not what we want to do, but His will. So, let's take a look at the pleading of King David when he sought to get it right with God. Psalms 139, 23 and 24 make this clear, humble declaration. He said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my very thoughts." Verse 24 says, "And see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me into the way everlasting." That's what true leaders should exemplify: a heart bent towards God. You see, in the bigger picture, in the bigger scheme of things, even through Saul's failure, God prepared the way for David and ultimately for Jesus Christ, the true King of Kings. You see, Saul's failure set in motion the preparation for someone who is willing to walk the walk and talk the talk. You see, there's a lesson here, and there's a lesson that each and every single one of us must be mindful to adhere to. It's that human failures do not thwart God's sovereign plan. He uses all circumstances to accomplish His purposes, often revealing His faithfulness amid human weakness. So as Saul continued on the trajectory that God had planned for him by giving him a new heart, Saul would have ended up at a different place. You see, these men that approached Samuel for a king, every single one of them is lost. Every single one of them is lost. You see, when we reject God or God's leadership, we are setting ourselves up for failure. You see, Israel's demand for a king stemmed from a clear rejection of God's direct rule. As Israel departed from God's law, they developed unquenching desires to be like the world, nations of which God warned them not to engage. I want to go back to the names of two persons that I mentioned earlier, Mr. Carlton Bird and Genome Diop. You see, these men were incensed on bringing in idolaters, bringing in a kind of worship that should have never been or find its place in God's remnant church. You see, notice, it was the leaders who approached Samuel. I want to also mention that every single time that the nation of Israel went into apostasy, it was precipitated, designed, and initiated by the leaders. See, turning away from God's guidance leads to flawed decision making and spiritual decline. Trusting in human institutions or leaders over God result always in instability. Always in instability. You see, our lesson, there are a few lessons we can learn. Turning away from God's guidance lead to flawed decision making, spiritual decline. But in anything, there are a number of things that we should endeavor to do. You see, Saul's downfall began with his impatience. Saul's downfall began with his impatience. Let's take a look at that in 1 Samuel chapter 13, 8 to 14. And it says there, and he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed him. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. Saul said, bring either a burnt offering to me and peace offering. And he offered the burnt offering. And it came to pass that as soon as he had made end of the offering, the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and the Philistines gathered themselves together in Michmash. Therefore I said, because Saul was impatient, he departed from the wisdom and the direction of God. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw the people were scattered from me, that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. Therefore said I, the Philistine will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. I forced myself therefore and offered a burnt offering, making all kind of excuses for his bad actions. But there is a lesson, a very potent lesson, and I don't think I am absolved here either. There is an important lesson that us as leaders, or leaders generally, must learn. Or godly leaders. Patience is essential in leadership and faith. Waiting on God's timing allows His perfect plan to unfold. And so, in summary, the story of Israel and King Saul offers timeless lessons applicable to modern life and leadership. Trust God's guidance rather than seeking worldly solutions. Prioritize inner character over external qualification. Recognize the weight of leadership and the importance of obedience to God. Acknowledge God's sovereignty, even in seasons of failure and disappointment. It is the narrative challenges you and I to examine our own desires. And so let us be mindful that the kind of trust we put in early leadership, let us put God's trust, let us put God first and pursue obedience as the foundation of a thriving relationship with God. That, in and of itself, will provide the basis of being a good leader. You see, today leadership is measured by popularity contests. Today leadership is not measured by doing the right thing. It is measured by a popularity contest. You see, the leaders, when they approached King Saul, they thought the popular wind was in their favor because they have sold the nation, they have sold the surrounding people in the nation of Israel an idea that seems and appears exciting. The optics of the nations around them excited and titivated them. And so in that context, popularity rather than a clear, precise countenancing with God and his direction and advice was made to play second fiddle to popularity. I don't know of a time in history where popularity in declaring what is right ever worked out well for any group of people, any group in particular for that matter. You see, the popularity contest never works out. You see, I want to let you know this afternoon is that as we draw closer to the end of time, there are more and more evidence that we are reaching that pivotal time, that pivotal moment where the earth is in a tailspin. I want to suggest that for us as leaders, myself and others, it is time for us to do what is right and not what is popular. Because what is popular never really works in our subject's best interest. Mind you, not even in our best interest. You see, in the situation with Saul, you see, we find that it is best to obey God than to sacrifice. It is best to stick with the way of the Lord. When the children of Israel make the defining moment by declaring, "Nay, but give us a king anyway," they decidedly determine their future. So I want you to know that Saul's end was bitter. The nation of Israel fall into disarray under Saul's leadership. Not only that the nation of Israel fall into disarray, it was they want to also make it abundantly clear that Saul himself committed suicide. For the simple fact that Saul was not consecrated by God. Saul thought it best to do what he feels, and he developed a rebellious character, therefore ending in a bitter end. Israel's choice for a leader did not work out for them. If we look around us today, we can see nations making the exact same decisions that the Israelites made. And don't get me wrong, that too will not work out in those countries' best interest. I want to thank you for being here with me this afternoon as we once again engage in a Sabbath afternoon Bible study. You see, present truths are important, and history teaches present truth. Learning from the past will give us a good way to move forward. Let us be mindful. Let's not forget history, but stand in the way where we ought to go. Learn from the errors of the past so we can make clear and decided decisions going forward. I want to say thank you for being here with me this afternoon. God bless and take care. See you next week.